joined in the studio by Natasha Hausdorff, barrister at 6 Pump Court Chambers and Director of UK Lawyers for Israel. What an extraordinary catalogue of events in the course of the last 48 hours. Indeed, and I think the real tragedy here, and one of the key casualties, is the rule of law that we just heard being referred to. What we've seen is a campaign of lawfare across various international legal organisations, not just the International Criminal Court, but we've seen a great deal of this sort of activity at the International Court of Justice, the UN's highest court, and at other UN bodies and institutions. The UN Human Rights Council is a case in point, and of course you've referred to the Security Council. Yep. But in the context of this application we have seen by Prosecutor Khan for arrest warrants, if they are in fact issued, I anticipate that the international backlash will be severe, in particular from the United States, on the back of the comments we've seen coming from the administration thus far. Yes, I mean, the Biden administration have been somewhat equivocal over the events in Gaza, but I think on this, I think you're right. I think on this, and Biden has already said some fairly, at least I think, sensible things. But do you not get the feeling internationally that Israel is now becoming pretty much a pariah state? Running out of friends, quickly. Well, that is the intention behind the parties, I think, fueling these lawfare initiatives. And I should be clear that I think lawfare needs to be called out as an abuse of international law in particular in these contexts. I think it threatens international legal order. And if David Lammy and others, especially here in the UK, as a state party to the Rome Statute, as a member of the International Criminal Court, really care about the impact these developments will have on law-abiding states, we need to be clear about calling lawfare out. In the context of these recent developments, while the intention is to create Israel as a pariah state, I think right-thinking individuals around the world look at the facts, look at the realities of the law, and hopefully see through these politicised initiatives. Maybe the voting for the Eurovision Song Contest rather proved that point in this country, where the British public put Israel top. So, I mean, there is something there, clearly, in what you say. Coming back to this country for a moment, big march, of course, last Saturday in London, Intifada being chanted in the streets of London. But we're told this week it's all going to change. You know, the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, we're going to crack down on these marches in a way we haven't before. Big speech today by Michael Gove, talking about anti-Semitism. Is this a sign that the government are really beginning to wake up to this and to become robust, or should they have done this 6 months ago? I think the concern here is we've seen a degree of flip-flopping over the last 6-7 months. It's significant that today we had a decision from, I believe, the court, the Netherlands, signifying that from the river to the sea is incitement to hate. Of course, we've had a former Home Secretary clear that this is a genocidal chant, and it remains at the centre of the marches that you've been describing. So what do we do? What do the police do? Well, they should be using the powers that they already have in order to better police the law-breaking that we are witnessing, which has been continuing on an almost weekly basis along the last 7 months. I mean, it's undeniable that that level of incitement has been contributing not just to the international discourse, but also to the way that the media has been covering this, and it's almost a vicious cycle. One's fueling the other. And the way that Jewish people are being treated now at universities. I had an example of a friend whose daughter's having a really difficult time in year 1 at university. Yeah, I mean, it is very difficult. I spent 20 years in Brussels and Strasbourg in the European Parliament, travelling between the two, and I watched in Brussels as Jewish people literally left the city. The only Jewish people left were rich people living in gated communities while they had security. I used to walk in Strasbourg into the European Parliament through a Jewish area, predominantly Jewish area of Strasbourg, and see soldiers with guns escorting young kids into their primary schools for protection. Are we in danger, in London in particular, of seeing an exodus of Jewish people saying this is just not a place that we want to live anymore? I think the question is, where would they go other than Israel? Because we're seeing this replicated all over the world. I've just today come back from Australia, and the time that I spent in Sydney and Melbourne in particular left me with the same unfortunate impressions, and communities all over the world are facing the same challenges, and there are very few governments, they are few and far between, that have been willing to address this robustly, willing to protect
the vulnerable in this equation and ensure that the balance between freedom of speech, which is sacrosanct, and against incitement to violence, racial hatred, and increasingly we're seeing that crossover from speech to violent acts as a result of, I think, the failure to be robust in those respects. Yeah,
and that's my feeling, that all these statements from big cabinet ministers this week should have happened 6 months ago. Natasha Hausdorff, thank you very much indeed for joining me on the programme here on GB News.